So for those of you who may not know me, I'm Professor Marie Franklin from the Comms Department, where I teach classes in journalism and media ethics. And it's a real pleasure for me to be here today to introduce our first speaker at our first ever Com Day. She is Teresa Hanafin, the Director of Engagement and Social Media for Boston.com, a role that she assumed in 2006 after more than 7 years as the site's first editor. Teresa's work in journalism extends back at least to her college days at the University of Massachusetts, where she was a writer and an editor for the campus newspaper, The Collegian. So she well understands the dreams and the passions for writing and reporting that many of you have shown here at Lasell and certainly with the 1851 Chronicle. It was in college that Teresa learned how to handle a beat, to report and interview, and to write on deadline. Teresa joined the staff of the Boston Globe in the mid-'80s, where she was the chief of the paper's Cape Cod bureau. Her career took off from there, and she spent 15 years holding many positions, including assistant managing editor for computer-assisted reporting and local news. In 1999, Teresa joined what was then the fledgling Boston.com site, where she was its first editor, so a real trailblazer in digital media. During her 7 years as editor, traffic on Boston.com grew 600%, and the site became the 5th largest digital media news site in the country. Today, Teresa oversees the company's social media strategy and efforts to increase user interactivity and participation. So I'm sure she'll have a lot of valuable tips and tools to pass on to us, as well as a really keen understanding of all the changes that have taken place in journalism and will continue in the future. After she presents, there'll be time for a question and answer period, and I hope you will all become involved with that. And oh yes, I forgot to mention, in my years as a Boston Globe employee, I found Teresa to be one of the kindest, nicest, most helpful people in the building, and it's just really a pleasure to have her here with us at Lasell today. Teresa Hanafin.
Well, Marie, thank you for that introduction. You did some very good research, I will say. I know you said I was kind, but...
She is.
Oh, well.
News teams that are springing up in newsrooms right now. You need a solid grounding in the principles, the practices, and the ethics of journalism. I know for a fact that you've gotten that here at Lasell. I've spoken to classes here. There's no doubt in my mind. The teacher ratings that I showed you. You first have to understand how the California school system, or the Los Angeles Times school system, works before you can be part of an interactive news team like that. That takes reporting. It takes a lot of hard work. You also learn as a journalist that you have to ask questions like, is this fair? Are we doing a disservice to these teachers by looking at them on just one narrow measure, which is student performance on standardized tests? Well, the LA Times discussed this and decided that it wasn't, consulted with educators, etc. But you have to know the questions to ask. You have to be able to know whether that's a fair way to assess something. And you only can do that if you're a practicing journalist. And then maybe they bet with their friends. You think he's going to pass, or you think they're going to run? What do you think they're going to do? Well, we took every single play that the Patriots had run during 2012 into 2013 and put it in a database. And then with a little bit of coding by one of our developers, we were able to come up with this interactive. So you can pick the down, you can pick how many yards to go there are, and you can pick the field position. Let's say they're on the opponent's. Well, they never faced this situation. Isn't that interesting? Let's see if we can find a... Okay, they faced this situation 6 times. When they had 3rd down, only 2 yards to go. A lot of teams would run the ball in that situation, but not the Patriots. They passed because they have Tom Brady. as their quarterback. And if you're from New England, you're very happy about that. Now, you know, if you, I want to explain to you a little bit, but let me show you one more, or a couple of more things. You know, again, being able to envision what you can do as a content producer, and you tell me that in your last job, your website covered the local road race, and the runners wear chips on their sneakers so that the race organizers can figure out their start time and their finish time. And there are checkpoints in between too, so to make sure they're not a Rosie Ruiz, who was that famous woman who ran the Boston Marathon, but she took like the green line most of the way, and she jumped into the race near the end, and she finished first. I'll never forget, she was being interviewed by Catherine Switzer, who was the, you know, the dean of the Boston Marathon, because she was the first woman to run it. She ran it illegally. Women were barred from running the marathon previously, believe it or not. She registered as Kay Switzer, and so they didn't know her gender, and she ran the race, and the head of the Boston Athletic Association saw her on the course, ran onto the course, and tried to physically pull her out. Now, fortunately, her boyfriend, who was a bodybuilder, was running with her, and he kind of just, with one swipe of a big arm, knocked the race director out of the way, and she did finish the race. Catherine Switzer interviewed Rosie Ruiz at the finish line, and she starts asking her questions like, "You don't look very sweaty." You know, this is on live TV. And in your run-up in your practices, what were your split times? And Rosie Ruiz looks at her and says, "What are those?" So immediately everyone knew that this woman was an imposter. But if you were a content producer and you found out that you had access to that your town has a road race, and that's how the race organizers keep track of it, and as a matter of fact, they have a database of that, you could ask for that database. And if you sat in my office during this interview and told me that you had set up a video camera at the finish line, and that after the race was over, you had taken that spreadsheet with everyone's finish times, and you had coordinated it with the video, and that you were able to put up on your website video where people could go and type in their finish time, and they'd be able to see 10 seconds before their finish time and 10 seconds after, and they'd be able to see a little video clip of themselves crossing the finish line. Well, that would get you hired at Boston.com, because that's exactly what happened with a guy from Jacksonville. His name is Joe Allen Black, and he's working at Boston.com today. And that's one of the reasons I hired him, and that was a very big reason.